Welcome to the Blitz with Rob and Chris. Rob, what it do?
Man, listen, I told you when that Rona was gone, I was going to hit these streets. And I had one of these Miami weekends, you know, where night turns to day real quick. You look up, sun's coming up.
You got Outbreak 2.0.
I had the Hitch beverages with me on the beach. Listen, it was a weekend.
Shout out to Hitch Bevs. Look, we started off with fuck them other niggas. Look, man, No Limit Chronicles, bro. We grew up in New Orleans when No Limit was, top of the food chain. And reliving this right now is keeping me going through the pandemic. But what was your take from episodes 3 and 4?
So my favorite part of episodes 3 and 4 was the story, actually the background story on Fuck Them Other Niggas, where Snoop talks about going to Cali and they do the show and Death Row catches him in the back by himself, catches him slipping, and they try to jump him. He said he threw one punch and he was out the damn door. And then they cut to the stage. I guess somebody must have run on stage, or maybe the fight must have come through the stage area.
Yeah.
Clearly, it looked like from the video, gunshots were being fired on the stage. And the fans are running everywhere. And the Priority Records people, apparently, they're all still trying to keep the cover going because they were talking about it was gunshots from the track. But it looked pretty clear that they were shooting at the Death Row people right on the spot. Anyway, Snoop gets arrested. And then the funniest part of the story is he said he ran into Ray J in jail. And that shit had me cracking up.
Right, because I'm like, I didn't even know who Ray J was back then. Ray J was about 19 years old.
Right.
The hell he was doing in jail.
Already getting in trouble.
Right.
That was pre-Whitney Houston Ray J.
That's what they call foreshadowing.
Right.
But yeah, next week we're gonna have finish up No Limit, and then they're going into the Rough Riders Chronicles. So
man, and DMX got some stories.
Oh yeah.
DMX got some stories.
I'm waiting for that Cash Money one next.
The craziest part was when I was watching the Snoop Dogg DMX verses, and he was talking about robbing chicks that he slept with, and I was like, "Yo, DMX was a wild boy." I think the quote was "Purse first, ass last." I think that's what he said. It's a wild boy.
I can't wait for that one. Then that was gonna get off. So yeah, man. So look, it's been not a great sports week, but there's been a lot of big things going on. So let's get right into it. Look, will college football happen? It's starting to be a little shaky. Saturday, the Mid-American Conference (MAC) announced that it will suspend football in the fall and hope to return in the spring. And so now it's looking like there could possibly be a domino effect. The Power 5 conference commissioners held the emergency meeting tonight, and no immediate decision was made, but people are starting to report it looks like the Big Ten is ready to call the season in the fall, and the other big Power 5 conferences could follow. So what's your thoughts, on what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, so I'll start with the MAC, right? The MAC, we're not missing the MAC, right? We're talking about Toledo, who else is in there?
Kent State, Bowling Green,
Central Michigan,
Miami, Ohio.
I think the best record in the MAC last year was 8-6. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So that's a mid-major. We're not missing them if they cancel. But more importantly, these sources saying that they had this emergency meeting tonight. Before this meeting tonight, what I had heard was I saw on social media, and I retweeted from the Blitz Twitter page. There's supposedly like a group of Big Ten schools. Michigan, I think, was in there.
Yep.
And a couple others were considering joining the Big 12 for the purposes of having football this year. And that's when I knew, it's getting real, because the Big Ten, those are some of the oldest, most historic institutions with the largest endowments. We haven't had this conversation on the podcast, but we had it a bunch off the pod, just about, which schools wield the most, power based on the finances that they're sitting on, right? Because you can potentially tap into the investment money from your endowments. Michigan is going to be up there. You're talking about maybe $10 billion, $12 billion endowment. So when a school like Michigan is concerned, everybody should be concerned, right? Because they probably have more money than most of the SEC schools, right? But I think what it's starting to come down to there's some moral issues here, right? There's some moral issues with asking these kids to get out here and play a sport that they're not getting paid to play. And the questions that these kids are asking are very realistic questions. It's the same thing the pro athletes are asking. And then you're trying to force the student body back into school. We've talked about it on previous podcasts. It's solely for the purposes of justifying bringing the football back. And realistically, you have an option to move it to the spring, but they're probably scared to move it to the spring because any draft eligible player is not going to participate in spring football when they need to be preparing for the draft.
Right.
So I'm on the verge of saying the fact that this meeting is even taking place means we're probably not going to see football. I was listening to a podcast with Bobby Bowden probably Friday night, and Bobby Bowden said he thought that football would start, but it wouldn't finish because of positive tests.
Right.
But the fact that they're having a meeting tells me that there's a good chance that it's either they're gonna try to push it to the spring, play without the draft eligible players, or have a delayed start date. Because we're like 3 weeks out from kickoff, basically.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I never thought we talked about this before. I didn't think it was going to happen. Baseball can't control it without fans, with professional athletes. And when you talk about, I mean, we were in college, parties, dating, hanging out with your boys, whatever. It's at 18 to 22 years old. The last thing you're worried about is a virus that seems to impact older people. You're willing to take your risk. Whatever happens. More than likely, you'll be asymptomatic. And if you do experience anything, your body's strong enough to fight it off. So you're talking about kids who are not making great decisions. That's when you make a lot of mistakes. You learn, you're having fun. You're not really worried about consequences, even real consequences, right? I know dudes had multiple DUIs in college. So that's real consequences. So when you talk about a virus that more than likely won't impact them negatively or long term, they just don't make good decisions. And so when you got a player, 85 scholarship player, 100 players on a college roster, amidst 30,000 kids on campus, or given whatever the population of a given school, it's just prone to cause a disaster. And then not even talking about fans. When you talk about 100,000 in Tiger Stadium, and you see most of those people get a few drinks in them, they're not making the best decisions. So it's just opens yourself up. And like you said, it's clearly about the money, because at this point, why are we even talking about it? Like, if baseball can't handle it without fans, with pro athletes, I just don't see any way to do it in college. So it's clearly about money, and we'll see what happens. But I'd say, like you, the fact that they're having the discussions, I don't see it happening. I would expect by Tuesday or Wednesday, this season is canceled, and then moving to the spring. But talking about that, what's the impact, right? You mentioned the spring, the draft eligible prospects not playing in the spring. So you have that. Then how does that impact the NFL draft? Does it get pushed back to count for spring season? How does pushing it back into the spring affect the fall season next year? So what's your thoughts on some of these major issues? To
be quite honest, I feel like the NFL could work with college football on that and push the draft back, because the draft's typically in April. But when you think about it, what do you need to have the draft in April for? I mean, you don't have a lot of these players are just signing their contracts. I mean, you have this calendar year that includes like free agency, the draft, blah, 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 blah. But I don't see what the issue would be with pushing all of that back. And then just starting right up against the season, having the draft closer to the season, and bringing the players in right up against the season.
Yeah, I mean, you got mini camps that they might miss, but training camp doesn't start till end of July.
But realistically, they didn't have those mini camps this year anyway because of COVID, and they did all of that stuff via Zoom, and they just went over the playbook over the computer. So why wouldn't you be able to do that again?
Right. I think it also comes to the only thing about a spring league is you have basketball, you have March Madness, and so like how does that start impacting TV contracts? Right. Viewership, ratings, all those kind of things. So I think
that's what the schools would have to worry about.
Right.
But the players themselves, so we were texting, off the pod, Marvin Wilson from Florida State, who's a defensive tackle, who's projected first round pick. They asked him if he was vocal early in the year about Mike Norvell's situation with the text messages with Black Lives Matter and everything. And so they wanted another, quotable moment from him. And he said, I didn't come back to sit out. They were asking him his position on all of these players, discussing sitting out for like the demands like the Pac-12 players made. He said, I didn't come back to sit out. So you have some players who are draft eligible, know they're going to be first round picks, and they're like, why chance it? But then you have a player like him who was probably a questionable first, second round pick, but he wanted to move up to the top half of the first round, possibly even top 10. So he came back with that sole goal in mind. So for somebody like that, canceling the season is a huge deal, right?
Yep.
You also have guys, every year this happens. They have people who don't have big years until their last year, and then they're out. You have redshirt juniors, redshirt sophomores who pop up, have flashed in the fan season, and they go to draft. Like, it's going to definitely impact people's futures, no doubt.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Sticking to college, but moving on, everybody knows about the Rooney Rule in the NFL, but in West Coast Conference, WCC, they implemented what is now known as the Russell Rule. They implemented it last week. It's named after Bill Russell, who led University of San Francisco to a national championship, and they're a member of the West Coast Conference. And so the Russell Rule is basically, essentially, what the NFL's Rooney Rule is. It includes a minority finalists for all job openings in athletics. So those finalists include openings for athletic director, senior administrator, head coach, or full-time assistant coach within the league. Saying that it must include a member of a traditionally unrepresented community. And so, do you see this as a impact to the Power Five eventually? Do you see this rule impacting the hiring process as it relates to all conferences in college?
Listen, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but didn't the NFL just get rid of the Rooney Rule because it wasn't doing anything? I mean, we still couldn't really improve minority hiring in the NFL. What I think is more important that just took place is, I don't know if you saw that Mike Loxley just got together and they're starting a coalition, a minority coaches coalition, to basically try to inject more minority coaches into the pipeline. And there's a board of directors. Nick Saban's on the board of directors. I think that's what, realistically speaking, will be more beneficial to both the NFL and college coaching pipeline in the long run. Because as we always talk about in this podcast, it's always all about relationships, right? Realistically speaking, you got to get in the rooms. You got to be invited to the mixers and the parties, and people just basically have to, generally speaking, say, I think I like that guy. I think I can see him as a leader, because a lot of times that's what it comes down to. We talk till day and night off this podcast about Mike Mayock versus our boy at ESPN, Louis Riddick, and how when you look at Louis Riddick's resume and you put it next to Mike Mayock's resume, who's previously on the NFL Network for like 20 years, when you put their resumes side by side and you take away any other information about these two people, you would say Louis Riddick was the far and away better candidate, with a history of scouting in the NFL, playing for multiple years in the NFL, was played under Bill Belichick, was on the staff, in upper level management for the Philadelphia Eagles. Yet Louis Riddick has not yet received a job as a general manager, and Mike Mayock got a job with the Raiders as a general manager. So that's realistically the relation. It's not that there's not qualified people, right? Right. And forcing you to interview a qualified person that you don't know has proven not to work, right? It's about the relationship. It's about knowing the person. So I think long term, getting your name out there might help with that, but the relationships have to be long term and established for the trust factor to exist for the job to take. Right.
And like you said, just making me include a finalist is just that, right? It just makes me include a finalist. It doesn't give me any demands on hiring them, giving them an opportunity. And like you mentioned, it's all about relationships. And we talked about it earlier in the summer. It's about, with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's all about giving blacks and minorities opportunities. We need opportunities. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it's based off relationships. And so you look at Mike Loxley, he comes from underneath the Saban tree. And then in football and basketball especially, it's all about that tree. You look at Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher, head coach at A&M, the defensive coordinator, I can't think his name, at South Carolina.
Will Muschamp, head coach at Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. So you think of all these guys. You think of, in the NFL, the one black coaching tree was under Tony Dungy. He had Lovie Smith. I believe Mike Tomlin came from underneath. Underneath them. The guy, the head coach at Arizona State, Herm Edwards, came under
all on one staff together.
And so it's all about the relationships in that coaching tree, and people associating you with a winner. And so I think, like you said, this coalition is going to do just that. It's going to give people opportunities to be under a tree, under a branch, and leverage those relationships and opportunities being associated with winning coaches. So
I looked at a coaching tree from Bill Parcells back in the day with the Dallas Cowboys. On one staff, he had Sean Payton, Mike Zimmer, Todd Bowles, Anthony Lynn, the head coach of the Chargers, Tony Sparano, who's been a head coach, Paul Pasqualoni, who was the head coach at Syracuse, Todd Haley, been the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs and for the Steelers. I mean, his whole staff was littered with people who ended up becoming. That's the way the game works. Exactly. It's really a microcosm of life. I mean, it's the way life works too.
Yeah. So I mean, I think, like you said, the rule is cool because it gives some people at least a chance to get into the room, but it's not going to impact the hiring of those people, candidates. So I think what Loxley is doing is going to make more of an impact in this Russell rule. But, I applaud the West Coast Conference for trying to do something. It's better than nothing. And maybe it'll open up the eyes of some of the Power 5 conferences. So,
real quick, though, I wanted to
NFL.
Throw one other thing out there with regard to the Power 5 and what's going on. I don't know if you saw, but the great Deion Sanders, basically, he came out and said, game don't need y'all. I need y'all to understand. Let me give him his exact words. All players opting out in all sports. Please believe the game will go on without you. This is a business. Don't you ever forget that. There's no one that's bigger than the game itself. Only the ref, umps, and officials are that important that you can't play without them. Not you. And hashtag truth.
Yeah, I don't know where he was coming from there. Like, I find it.
He got a lot of blowback on social media.
He should, though. Especially a guy who used the game himself to brand and create an image for him. Prime time.
That's exactly what everybody said. They said, wait, not Deion, who played by his own rules. And, you watched his 30 for 30. He was all upset at the media for not letting him be him and play 2 sports and do the 730s.
Right. Created his own brand, his own alter ego. And he was around the same time as Bo Jackson, Bo knows. Like, these guys all created personal brands in a team sport. And for him to come out and try to judge a guy for opting out, especially when I find it odd that people are trying to make the guys who are opting out somehow selfish. Like I heard a player for the Patriots post last week or a week or two ago. I find it odd that they were talking about Dante Hightower specifically, that you call a guy selfish who gave up $8 million because he cared for the health of his family over playing the sport and making that money. And so I tend to agree with that player, and I don't understand how the media is trying to portray, and Deion is trying to portray a guy as selfish who's concerned about his family and the well-being of his family. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to say that, people said exactly what you said, and he said, y'all not reading my exact words. Like, I guess he's trying to say, well, I didn't say if you have health issues. I guess it's his point.
But to me, even if you don't have health issues,
if you don't currently have health issues, you may be doing it because you are thinking about the long-term potential health aspects that we don't know yet, right?
Or other family members in your household who might be susceptible,
right, because that's the thing. When you don't have a bubble, you are potentially exposing everybody in your house to this thing.
That's right. And so, like,
I will say along all these lines, quiet as kept, the Marlins are like 6-1 right now. So they just ripped off like 6 in a row. So there's a lot of people saying, like, Corona's winning everything this year. Might as well win baseball too.
But look, I want quick to that point. I don't want to get off topic, but there was 9 days in between the Marlins game where they tested positive and the game where they started back. It was 9 days, and as far as I know, the CDC said you got to quarantine for 14 days. So
they did reduce
that rule.
They did reduce it to 10 now.
Okay. Yeah. And I know they was practicing during them 9 days. So I think they was breaking all the rules.
Right. I will say too, people giving the benefit of the doubt to the Marlins, but I will also say with COVID must not be that bad. The other side of it is baseball is a physically demanding sport with the travel and playing day in and day out. So you just got all these days off and then you show up and start playing against people who've been playing for like 15 days straight. There's some physical benefit to that as well, which to me, that's an interesting side story to baseball, is that with all of these cancellations of games, people's schedules are all over the place. Right. I'm 20 games in, you're 9 games in, and my pitcher has pitched 5 games now. Your best starter's only started 2 games. Right. So I feel like all of that's going to quietly have subtle impacts in baseball.
So look, I want to go back to football. We talking about players opting out. Now refs are there's some concern over NFL referees where the average age is 52. And this weekend the referees came to an agreement with the NFL and NFL Players Association where referees will be given a $30K stipend and a guaranteed spot for the 2021-2022 NFL season if they choose to opt out. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, at least as far as I've read so far, referees don't have to have any pre-existing conditions to opt out. Mm-hmm. And based on what they've been given, which is about a fourth of their salary, $30,000 is about a fourth of what they make in the season. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that they're being treated better than NFL players, because NFL players have to show proof if they opt out to get $350K, and if they don't have any pre-existing injuries, they get $150K. And it also counts towards the next season, so they have to essentially pay that money back. It's in advance. It's not really a stipend. Mm-hmm. So I find that odd that referees, I know they're a little bit older. The average age is 52, a lot older actually, but it seems to me that they're getting a much sweeter deal, and seem to be the NFL cares about the health of the referees more than the players themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about CDC guidelines and stuff. They're probably more likely to fall under people who are, in danger, essentially, from COVID. So maybe they're just trying to be responsible. Also, like Deion said, the only people who are irreplaceable, the refs and them, got to have them out there, right? And we saw what football looked like that year that we did replacement refs. So the year we did the replacement, right. So maybe they just thinking like the one thing we can't do is have massive outage, like basically almost not protest, but like a massive, essentially boycott of the season by the refs. And then all of a sudden, where the hell would that leave us?
You don't want replacement refs for sure.
Right. That's the only thing I could think. And I mean, in the big scheme of things, I think we talked about this previously on the podcast, like how many refs are there? And then we talked about, I think salary probably around 120. So you have those issues. I think that's the impetus behind it. I don't think
pipeline.
I don't think it's anything against the players.
Yeah. I don't know. It just always seems to me that the players get the short end of the stick, man. They don't take care of their players at all. But look,
union. That's why union.
Yeah, true. So you got NFL training camp underway. Started beginning last week. There's not been too many storylines because they can't practice in pads right now, and so there's no preseason games to prepare for. Other than that, is there any NFL news? Any teams you're looking forward to seeing? Anything that sticks out as we head into the season?
So like Sean Payton said before the season started, Saints head coach said, this isn't our idea. Like basically this isn't our training camp. And so what he made clear from the interview I listened to is the fact that they have new rules this year. Mm-hmm. They don't start having padded practices till August 17th. And I believe it's the 16th or the 17th. And there's no preseason. And the first game is on the 13th. And roster cuts are like September the 4th from 80 down to like 53. So this is really like not a real off season.
Right.
Like, and we really should pretty much expect that the first 3 games of the season are going to look like preseason, and we'll probably see some injuries because the way this is being handled, they're out there just doing walkthroughs essentially right now. So,
but I think it helps a team like the Saints, right? That's when you start looking at the Saints, maybe the Seahawks, the Chiefs, teams that have a solid core. They've won previously. Because you've got that team chemistry, you got a stable head coach with a Sean Payton, a Andy Reid, a Pete Carroll. Those guys have a program in place and players who followed that program for a while. So to me, especially when you look at the Saints in the NFC South, you got a new quarterback in Carolina with Bridgewater. You got a new quarterback in Tampa with Brady. And as great as Brady is, at 42, to be playing with guys he's never played with before.
And he just made 43.
Yeah, it takes time. No matter how good you are in a new system with new players, they got to get to learn you. You got to get to learn them. So I look for teams like the Saints, the Seahawks, the Chiefs to really jump out in front of this thing in the first month of the season. So
listen, the Seahawks are serious. Like reports are that they brought in Clay Matthews. Reports are that they were looking at, I believe it was Clay Matthews, Everson Griffin, and then there are discussions about them picking up AB, Antonio Brown, and Josh Gordon.
Oh,
obviously, both of those dudes I think have suspended. I know Antonio Brown's is 8. I don't remember if Josh Gordon has a suspension, but I think he does going into next year. So yeah, they trying to bring in veteran help quick. Everson Griffin being a defensive end who was with the Minnesota Vikings last year, which I don't really understand what the holdup is with them trying to bring back Clowney, but
I know
any of those guys. I mean, that West, man, that West is that's a dominant division over there.
Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Well, hopefully we have some more stories and stuff coming out the NFL in the coming weeks with the students to padded practices start. But what is popping right now is the NBA. That bubble is going down in the bubble. They got all kind of storylines, all kind of games have been interesting. All the games have been really good. And I think when you factor in the bottom tier teams weren't invited to the bubble, you're getting all playoff caliber teams competing for spots. And so I think the competition has been good, and even the trash talking. So let's start off with Dame Lillard. Clippers played last night. Trailblazers were down 1 with a couple seconds left. Lillard's at the line. He misses both free throws and the Clippers win. And so Patrick Beverly, who's a
known trash,
just a known shit talker, just knows how to get under everybody. He's a 100% instigator in all cases. And Paul George, who's normally pretty quiet, but for some reason everybody
everybody when they get their friends, they turn into the bully on the block.
Right, and everybody go at Dame Lillard. I don't know if it's Dame or it's everybody else, but Dame got like a little edge to him.
Yeah, and I love it.
I love it too. I do. I like the fact that he go at him and Russell Westbrook always go at.
Come out in the same draft as AD. I remember wanting the Pelicans to draft Dame Lillard. Remember we had the 1st and the 10th pick.
That's right. Sure did.
Wound up with Austin Rivers. And who's not even an NBA starter.
he's coming to his own. I ain't gonna lie. He turned to a role player. But I love Dame's attitude. Like Dame just go after everybody. Him and Westbrook ain't got no love lost. And so saying that he missed the 2 free throws, Beverly and PG kind of mock him. PG-13 do the wave goodbye like he did to OKC last year to Westbrook and PG when they were there. And so they get into a little Twitter exchange where Beverly says that Dame said, both of y'all going, I've sent both of y'all home before. That's why y'all making fun of me, because
he said that in the post-game interview. Yeah.
He said that post-game interview. And so then Beverly hit him up on Twitter saying basically, this year you going to Cancun. I'm sending you home.
He said Cancun on 3.
Right.
And then your boy Paul George gets involved. I think he commented under one of the social media posts of like a maybe like Bleacher Report or somebody like that.
Right. Right.
He said, and you getting sent home this year, to which Dame Lillard replied, let me get this word for word.
Yeah, get that one right.
Keep switching teams, running from the grind. You boys is chumps. That's the quote. Dame Lillard, and I was right, 2012 draft, Anthony Davis was 1, Dame Lillard was 6 out of Weber State. And I remember him in March Madness that year just going off on Weber. And I was like, I love this dude's game. It would be perfect to match him in the backcourt with Anthony Davis. And I was right, but he went at 6 and we had the 10th pick. That's a huge difference between 6 and 10 that year.
Yeah, it was. I just love.
What we're talking about was us getting some Twin Towers and getting Andre Drummond, but he went at 9.
Right. Yeah, I love Lillard's competitiveness, man. Like he's from Oakland, so he kind of got like a beef with Steph Curry too, because he feel like the city shows Steph a lot of love. Yeah, exactly. So I just love the fact he came at and Paul George responded with something, but I know PG feelings was hurt.
Right. I sent you home before. Yeah, nah.
I know PG feelings was hurt, boy.
So the crazy thing is, like, they might not even make the playoffs, right?
Right.
They are still on the outside looking in. They would need to get to 9 and then have the play-in with Memphis just to be able to see the Lakers in the first round. Now, but I'm gonna say it, Charles Barkley has picked the Portland Trailblazers to win the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So he just be saying anything.
Chuck need to stop that, man. Right. But I will say, nobody has locked it down. But the Grizzlies lost to the Raptors today, which means there will be a play-in game. Right. Not sure what.
They are actually right now. The Trailblazers are only a half a game back of the Grizzlies.
Right, and the Grizzlies aren't guaranteed.
Right, they may actually jump the Grizzlies. I mean, they'll still be playing, so it won't matter.
Right, because you got the Grizzlies, the Trailblazers, the Spurs, and the Suns still all vying for that last spot. So there'll definitely be a playing game, but it hasn't been determined yet which two teams is going to be the playing game yet. But I'm not going to lie, the NBA is looking like they made a great decision because Phoenix is undefeated in the bubble. The Trailblazers looking like they could, do some damage if they get in the playoffs. Memphis got Morant, so there's a lot of talent, a lot of excitement coming into the bottom. But just getting to some other storylines in the bubble. Ben Simmons had a season-ending injury. He dislocated his kneecap, which has hurt a lot of guys. Andrew Bynum was a guy who had the injury, and his career kind of derailed after that. Antonio McDyess, for the basketball fans, early 2000s, was explosive. He had a similar injury, was never the same. And so there's some, potential ramifications long term to Ben Simmons' career and what that means to the 76ers. But in the short term, I don't think anybody expected them to go to the championship, but you got to remember, this was a team that last year almost beat the championship winning Raptors in the playoffs. Right. That's a big hit. And without Ben Simmons, although they hadn't been clicking on all cylinders, they definitely, probably won't get out the first round.
Yeah, I mean, that's a team with Joel Embiid, who always is experiencing injuries. I think he's only played 48 games this year, something like that. So now to lose him, I mean, just to come off of losing Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick, which put this team in a completely different stratosphere, right? Like they come in now as the 6th seed, whereas last year they were really a bounce away from going to the NBA Finals,
right?
From being in a position to go to the NBA Finals. So I just feel like that this is huge. I mean, it is for the future of that organization, and then more importantly, for the future of Ben Simmons' career long term. I mean, we've all heard he's not the best jump shooter, right? So he relies a lot on his athleticism and his size and stuff like that. So if his mobility is compromised, long term, he's not going to be the same player. I always saw him as somebody who eventually I feel like, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, I kind of see them like Steph Marbury and KG, right? Like the Philadelphia 76ers franchise just doesn't have it together. When you listen to Jimmy Butler and JJ Redick talk on like podcast interviews and stuff, they just don't really seem like they respected the coaching situation that's there. So you take those guys away who are the veteran leaders, and it puts you in an even worse position going forward. So now you got these young guys both experiencing nagging injuries. I kind of feel like they're going to have to go other places to really materialize to their full selves. Yeah,
they just never gelled as teammates either. It seemed like it was always whose team is it, and they failed to realize that you need each other to be. I mean, you need at least two stars to win it all. So I don't know why they couldn't figure it out, but that team it definitely isn't the same team it was last year because Jimmy Butler left, JJ Redick left, as you mentioned, those guys. But it's sad to see, man.
I feel like if you can have the inside out post game though, like the inside out game with God kicking it in and then kicking it back out, like that outside guy got to have the outside shot.
Right, not the center.
Right.
The center can't have a better jump shot than a point guard,
Right, which is this case here.
For the life of me, I'm an LSU fan, and Ben Simmons came to LSU. I can't understand a guy who was groomed to play basketball, whose dad played professionally in Australia, never developed a jump shot.
Right.
I just don't. I mean, that's the fundamental aspect of the game. You got to be able to shoot the damn ball. So I still just don't understand what happened with that. Other storylines: Pelicans and the Kings officially eliminated from the Western Conference playoff contention. So, I'm a Pelicans fan. New Orleans, one of our first podcasts was repping the drafting of Zion and, the next coming of the great basketball player to New Orleans. So, but in the bubble, he just never seemed to catch on. He had 25 tonight, actually, in a loss to the Spurs. But for some reason, they raved about him being in shape in the last 4 months, but he looked out of shape. He was getting limited minutes. I think he played 15 and 14 minutes respectively the first two games of the bubble. He rested one game a day or two ago. Just never seemed to
everything on the line, right?
With everything on the line. With everything.
Let's cut to the chase, right? We're from New Orleans. There's rumors that David Griffin, the new general manager, this is his regime. Mm-hmm. These are his players that he brought in, and maybe he wants his coach with his players, right? So there's an argument to be made that he handcuffed Alvin Gentry. He put that man in a bubble and then told him he could only play his best player for 15 minutes a game, right? To be honest, I mean, unless it's a Michael Jordan situation like we saw in the documentary where they were like, you could ruin your ankle and never be able to play basketball again. I think it was the ankle was a foot.
Right.
Unless it's that type of situation, I don't understand why you're not running Zion crazy, right? Like play him into shape. Sometimes you just got to play into shape. I kind of think that's what the Lakers are doing, right? Because them dudes, they don't look right, but they're just going to keep going out there. Bron took one night off, but he's still playing. I feel like the Pelicans handcuffed their own organization by letting this kid only play 15 minutes a game. So he just, had one of his better games towards the end of the relevant time frame in the bubble because he wasn't getting enough burn, to be right before. And it's crazy because everybody feels like they let all these extra teams into the bubble in order to get the Pelicans in, to have a Zion versus LeBron first round. I was never really on board with that because I felt like I always in the back of my mind, like, why wouldn't the Trailblazers get that spot? Like during the season, they were underperforming. And I felt like when they got Melo, it helped them a little bit right before everything ended. So I kind of felt like this was going to be their time. And I think it's proven as such. But nobody, I think, would have expected how bad the Pelicans have been in the bubble.
Yeah, I mean, I just got issues with resting a 19-year-old first overall draft pick on a back-to-back night. Like, you treating him like the Lakers are treating a 35-year-old, 17-year veteran LeBron James, like a guy who's proven himself and who needs to rest in order to make a championship run. You're talking about a team, the Pelicans, who fighting for their playoff life. You drafted this guy 1 overall. He had 4 months since since season ended with the pandemic, and just the way we've treated him with kids' gloves. And you see a guy like Ja Morant going off as the number 2 pick. I just start to question long term, are there some health issues with Zion? Is he gonna live up to the expectations? Is there something behind the scenes that we don't know about? It just raises a lot of questions that things were done, and I do believe that they brought the Pelicans in to try to get them in the playoffs. In a situation like that, and you barely play the guy, I don't know. It seems kind of fishy, and as a Pelicans fan, I'm concerned about the long-term health and success of the Pelicans under Griffin with Zion as the franchise centerpiece. And to your point about Alvin Gentry, a lot of rumors in New Orleans that he's going to stay on because of what happened with Zion not being fully healthy and them having Griffin and Gentry have a previous relationship in Phoenix. So there's a lot of talk about Gentry getting one more season. So we'll see what happens. But a lot of fans, and most fans in New Orleans, ready for a change at the head coach position. Just moving on to the Grizzlies. We talked about them, vying for that last playoff spot. They had the Jaren Jackson injury, and they've kind of struggled in the bubble. They're still holding on. They still got the 8th seed, but the Suns are coming up on them. As we mentioned, the Blazers are making their late season push. How do you think the Jaren Jackson injury impacts the Grizzlies?
I mean, I think that's
final games.
That's going to have a huge impact on them. I feel like that kid is young, athletic. He's long, 6'11". You just that don't grow on trees. You know what I'm saying? 17. You're talking about 17-5 a game, in only his second year in the league, 20 years old. So that can't be understated. Now you're going to go in, and we were talking about a playing game, but you have to beat the team 2 times. So it's not like
the 9th seed team.
Right.
They have to win twice to go.
Right. But with only a half a game up on the Portland Trailblazers, the Grizzlies with no Jaren Jackson might end up being an 9th seed team. Now trying to beat the Trailblazers twice. And I don't see that happen. Right. So they have to hold on to that 8th seed. But I think that's going to be really difficult without Jaren Jackson. I mean, you're talking about that's just the inside presence. He was still growing into himself, but that's a huge benefit to them in a series. He would have been a huge benefit to them in a series with the Trailblazers.
Yeah. So speaking about that 8th, 9th seed, we mentioned it a few times. We teased it. The Phoenix Suns. They've been the story, the Cinderella story of the bubble. They're the only undefeated team in the bubble. Devin Booker has been on a tear, and he even caused a little controversy on Inside the NBA Friday night with Draymond Green on a set. Him and Chuck trying to make amends, and Draymond comes out and says that, hey, Devin Booker's on the wrong team. He needs to go be playing with somebody else to utilize his talents, where he could turn those individual performances into wins. And NBA came out today and fined him $50,000 for tampering charges. What's your thoughts on Booker's performance, the Suns in general, and then on those comments, if Booker ends up somewhere else, who do you think would be a good fit for him, down the line?
Listen, Booker is a dog. Been a dog, was a dog at Kentucky,
yep.
And I mean, he's a scoring machine essentially.
That's light-skinned assassin.
Oh Lord, the boy can shoot lights out. 1 year at Kentucky, and you knew then that he could shoot. And I remember wondering why he was going pro, just because he, it was only 1 year. He didn't put up, the greatest numbers, like maybe 10 points a game or something like that. Mm-hmm. But basically, since his second year in the league, he's proven that he's a dog. And he's a guy that in the right system on the right team could probably win a scoring title at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm gonna throw a team out there. Because the center of their team is getting up there in age, 35 years old, LeBron James. Uh-oh. Anthony Davis, if you are the Los Angeles Lakers, you've given up draft capital all over the place. Your only answers are going to come in free agency.
Right.
And so in order to keep Anthony Davis, you're going to have to convince him that you're about to pair him with another young star in the backcourt as LeBron James phases out.
Right.
And who better than a scoring machine like Devin Booker? Because realistically, as we've seen in this bubble, Anthony Davis just seems to shut it down at some points.
Right.
I mean, how many he had 7 points, I think, against the Pacers the other night.
Yeah.
And so LeBron finally shows up to the bubble. He drops like 30 something. And then Anthony Davis is a no-show. These dudes can't get on the same page. So he's going to need somebody who night in and night out, and even the Lakers in general right now look like they need somebody night in and night out who can just create their own shot. Who's just like, and I hate to say this, but like they need somebody with the dog in them to be like, everybody move out the way. I'm about to shoot the ball. Like LeBron's got a lot of that magic in him. He still tries to facilitate. And Anthony Davis is just night in and night out. He's not always the same player.
And to be honest, like that's my biggest fear as a LeBron fan trying to win a championship. We had AD for 7 years in New Orleans with the Pelicans.
We know what he is and what he's not.
Exactly. And we know he's not a number one option. We know he's not the lead dog on a championship team. As great as he is, he's a great player, but he is not the number one player on a championship winning team.
He'll come out and give you 50 and 20 in one night and show up and give you 10 the next.
He'll be the best number two in the world, but he can't be that number one night in and night out, especially when the playoffs come. And
let's talk about the fact that Warren dropped 39. Like, right. At some points he was on it.
Yeah. So, for everybody out there, you heard it first on the Blitz, right? Devin Booker to the Lakers. Calling out shot early. Other storyline, the Dallas Mavericks. I'm not a big Dallas Mavericks fan. It's got to be the whitest team in the NBA, man. Like, they keep white boys on their squad. Dirt.
Hey.
Cold. They cold.
They right one.
They cold. I ain't gonna lie.
Farmed them out from the right places, boy.
I ain't gonna lie. Steve Nash, Dirt. They love the foreigners.
Canada, Germany. Luka, is Luka Serbian? I can't remember. No, is he Italian? And then
Porzingis, your boy.
Who is he Croatian?
Yeah, he's Croatian. So look, the Mavericks, they doing their thing. Luka dropped a triple-double last night in overtime against the Bucks. Luka looking like he got future MVP potential, and he outdued Giannis. Last year's MVP in what looks to be this year's MVP, but back-to-back MVP. So you're looking at the two future stars of the NBA, Luka and Giannis. And I wasn't sold on Luka. I kept hearing he's this great dude, and he demands
liability. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But
his feet are kind of slow. Not kind of. They got slow feet.
But offensively, he a monster.
Yeah,
he the truth, bro. So I'm enjoying it. I become a fan of more players in a bubble. Since everybody's coming on every day. Previous to the pandemic, you always caught the Lakers, the Clippers with Kawhi. You catch the Golden State Warriors, but you don't see a lot of. I didn't see a lot of Dallas. I didn't see a lot of Phoenix, and the bubble has given me a chance to catch some of these guys. So
let me correct myself because I was just yelling at all kind of wrong shit. Slovenian and the unicorn Porzingis is Latvian.
I'm disappointed, bro. He's a Knicks player.
Now Luca did. I think he was coming from the Italian Basketball Association as well.
Okay, yeah, you better clear that up. You was just all wrong.
But Luca's stat line: 36, 14 rebounds, 19 assists, and a steal in 42 minutes.
That's what I'm saying. He was
Yeah, he was nasty. I don't know if you saw the highlights. He had the between the back pass as the player was cutting to the basket. Like, it was nasty in the paint.
Anybody else? I know we talked about this last week, but anybody else standing out to you in the Eastern Conference that might? What's the Heat looking like? Your squad out there?
The Heat, man. The Heat. I was watching. They should have beat the Bucks the other day, and they blew a game against the Bucks late in the fourth quarter. And I think they had one other good win. But I don't know what's going on with the Heat because they suspended like Jimmy Butler for, well, I'm gonna say he sat out. So I don't know if he was suspended. Okay. I don't know if it's a rest issue. They had a good win over the Celtics the other day, but they played the Pacers. So that'll be a good game to look at because that might be your first round series. Right.
And I'll say the Celtics look like they're starting to get it together. Jason Tatum's starting to look like the monster he is, and the dog he is. Jaylen Brown look like Gordon Hayward. He dropped 30 tonight, mm-hmm. So they're getting their legs underneath them. And I think Boston could be a team to watch because I'm just not. We talked about this before. I'm not sold on Milwaukee. Giannis is a dog, but he's a liability shooting threes. Chris Middleton is the second best player on the team, and while he's been an all-star the last couple of years, he just doesn't strike fear in your heart.
He just got Eric Bledsoe back, but he can't. He's not a solid, not a reliable shooter at the.
So I keep looking at what teams can give the Bucks trouble because I don't think anybody's afraid of Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee's the best team in the East, but I don't think anybody's afraid of them. So I'm looking
because I thought Miami beats Indiana hands down, but now all of a sudden Indiana is balling. So that's why I'm gonna be interested to see what happens in this game tonight. It's probably going to be on as we're talking tomorrow.
Right, definitely.
And so I'll be interested to see what happens next because that essentially is the series that's going to happen in a few days. That's 4 versus 5. And then you're talking about, because I think the East really runs 5 deep. I think when you get to 6, 7, and 8, they're pretty much irrelevant, right? The 76ers have now lost Ben Simmons, and then you got the Nets, the Magic who already lost Jonathan Isaac.
Yeah, that second round gonna be a beast in the East.
Right. So really, we talking about the only first round series we're talking about is gonna be that Heat Pacers series.
Right.
And then the winner of that series is probably gonna be playing the Bucks.
Yep.
And so I think that the Heat will give the Bucks a run for their money. I went to see the Heat Bucks play here. Giannis will have his way, but I think man for man, the rest of the roster, Gordon Dragic, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler. The Heat might have the most improved player of the year in Bam Adebayo.
Yep.
So I just think it'll make for a really interesting series. And like you said, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I don't know that I see them coming out of the East.
Yeah, I'm not sold on it. I'm not sold on it, especially without home crowd advantage. With a neutral site field with no fans, I think that would have been the thing to get the Bucks over the top. And without having that, I'm just not sure they're the best team top to bottom in the Eastern Conference. So I look for that. But look, we about to wrap it up. But I'll bring it to you for our resident MLB expert. Any injury news? Any big storylines in MLB this week?
Well, there was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals who was suspended for basically going out. This is where we are in life now. Like, you go out, your ass gets sent home. Yeah. And then I heard that they made him take like a car. Like, they didn't even, there's no planes being sent.
Right.
Get in where you fit in. So this is just an interesting, time we're in. Baseball, to me, they mishandling this.
Yeah.
But to me, it looks like they're just trying to stumble to the end of that 60-game finish line.
Yeah.
And then you had a dugout clearing brawl today between the Athletics and the Astros, and I think it just goes to show, Major League Baseball didn't sufficiently punish the Astros, and so the rest of the league is saying, even in this shortened season, we're gonna give you that work night in and night out. We throwing at your heads, we fighting y'all.
Right.
We don't care if we get punished for it. I mean, because realistically speaking, COVID is a huge benefit to the Astros.
Right.
Because otherwise, night in and night out, you'd be hearing about this. But because it's this crazy season, people aren't really talking about it in the same way.
They're not even covering baseball like talking outside of like the COVID impact.
It'd be overshadowed by football. I mean, because you would think that baseball would be, every game would be relevant because they're only playing 60. Right. So at this point, we're almost at game 15. You know what I'm saying? That's almost 1/4 of the season is already over. You would think that the conversations are ramping up, but nobody's talking about baseball because the basketball playoffs about to start.
Right, because typically baseball right now would be before the preseason games start in the NFL and after the NBA Finals, and so they'd be the main topic.
Right.
With basketball clearly entering playoffs and football gearing up, they really getting maybe for the good of the sport. To be honest, it's probably better for baseball because it'd be all negative talk, which it is right now with COVID. But I think the Astros and MLB in general kind of slide under the radar, so that may be good for them. But outside of that, man, we wrapping it up tonight. We catch y'all next week. Anything before we go, Rob?
I mean, they got that new track out there, WAP. I don't even think I need to say anything else.
Yeah, look, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Girl, Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion. Boy, Meg Thee Stallion, Cardi B, I'm like, listen, oh, shit, wild girl. Meg Thee Stallion came on the track. She had me scared. Things she was talking about on that track just made me nervous.
In the middle of a pandemic, too?
Right. How you drop a track like that in the middle of a pandemic? Oh, and then along those same lines, you had one of the Kardashians in the joint in the video. The Kardashians had the feud with Jordan Woods. So it kind of seemed like this video popped up with Jordan Woods on my timeline. Everybody was sharing and resharing, and it kind of felt like she was trying to steal some Kardashian shine. I'm gonna just float that out there. Y'all can do y'all Googles at home. Y'all go do y'all Googles at home and see what I'm talking about. Y'all won't regret.
We out of here.
All right, let's get out of here.